All right, you leave TA title, and what is this job? You talk about the institute, but I think it's going to need explaining of what it is.
Um, the Institute was started in 1978 to provide education for title professionals. The companies were doing it hit or miss. They had a lot of trouble getting people trained. They didn't have time. And title companies always run thin in personnel because they always staff for the thin times, and title runs like real estate. It's this way, it's up and down, and they staff for this part, and when they're up here they still staff for this part. So they don't have time to do training, and their big beef is always, geez, we don't have time, and these guys don't know what they're doing, and da, 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 da. So the association said, let us form an institution. So it was spun off from the association, and its job was to educate title professionals. And Ed Schmidt was the first administrator. He had been retired from Commonwealth, which was one of the larger ones at the time. And he became the administrator, and he got it rolling. He did the thing. It was thin times for him. I know he worked very hard to build up a reserve, which was fortunate because when the market took a downturn, that's what the Institute lived on, you know, what he had put aside. He was kind of a canny old guy. He really was, shrewd. A bit of a manipulator, but you had to be with that group. It's a very, what you don't understand, a lot of people don't understand coming into it, is how political it is. You know, to me, I thought it was silly because, you know, small as it is, I guess the smaller something is, the more people want to have power about it and fuss about it. You know, it's like, no, come on, guys. And it gets very political at times. But he could maneuver, and he started that. He did a few seminars here, there, and there. And then he decided he really needed to retire. He was, at that point, about 78. And they had been looking for about a year and could not persuade anybody to take the job. I found a letter in the files after he really left where he was saying, I just don't know what we're going to do. I really want to retire, you know, and the famous line was, we may have to go to a woman for this job. This was truly an old boys club. Even the association was an old boys club. The Institute was the same. He interviewed me, and it was the world's most illegal interview. I mean, I had just written that personnel manual, and he asked every prohibited question there was. Are you married? Do you need health insurance? How old are your children? You know, I mean, it's like, and I'm looking at this guy, I said, oh, you know, I don't believe this. But I wanted the job. I wanted out of that company. And it sounded interesting, you know. It was a combination of the title I'd been doing plus teaching. So I got through the interview. I did tell him one time, I said, you know, you're not permitted to ask those questions, not legally. And if I were some other person, you know, I could make a problem. You should not be asking these things. Oh, but, you know, he was as old as Pop-Pop. So, you know, that was a different generation. They just, you know. I went there, and of course, what I did not know once I got the job was how bad financial straits they were in. They were in terrible straits, and nobody ever said a word about that. When I got to look at the books, I thought, oh, this job's going to last 2 months. He was living off the reserve, and money was not coming in. I visited each trustee where they lived. We had a board of trustees, mostly lawyers from here, there, and everywhere, and some people from the companies. And one of them actually said, I don't know why you want this job. Tell me why, you know. And I thought, well, I'm just going to give him some bullshit answer. You know, I'm not going to say anything was better than working for Bill Cotter. well, it's a challenge, and I think I could do this and turn it around and all this, because I didn't know when I took it I was going to have to turn it around. I actually just treated it often like an old guy's hobby. He worked there, and his friend Charlie Neal did, who also was retired from Commonwealth, and it was something they did actually part-time. They did it part-time because we were retired, we want to go, well, we're going to be away this 2 weeks, and that week I'm going here or there, someplace else, and programs didn't get that there. And they were very old-fashioned in how they administered the thing. We had a machine for mail that you had to stick in automatic one at a time. And if you're doing a 4,000-piece mailing, that becomes a little tedious, to ask somebody to do that, oh, guys, you can't do that. They had an old office at Broad and Shirley in a really decrepit building next door to the homeless intake. The building itself housed the Philadelphia Public Defender. And if you know who the public defender defends, you realize that was an interesting clientele going past our door. Our corridor had to be locked. So in order to go to your office, you had to unlock the corridor door first, and then unlock your door, which remained locked, and you had to go out the hall to find the bathroom and unlock that also, because there were all kinds of very strange people coming in and out of the defender's office. That was on one side, and on the other side of the locked door was the intensive surveillance patrol unit. And these are the guys who work undercover to bring in people who have broken parole. These are usually not upstanding citizens. And these guys go where they are, and so they often look pretty disreputable themselves because they have to kind of blend in. And the first week I got there, I walked into the elevator. I mean, I knew it was there. They finally did find out once I took the job. And there was this guy, and I couldn't figure out whether he was, who he was. And I must have looked like, oh my God, I'm going to die right here in this elevator. And he took pity on me, and he put his hand in his pocket, and he flashed his badge, and then he put it back in again so I wouldn't have a heart attack by the time I reached my floor. We had homeless people often coming in, wandering around, and they would. It was not a pleasant building. You couldn't work late because the building had to be locked up. It was really creepy. It was a very creepy building. What made me decide to break the lease was the day the bullet holes appeared in the lobby. And they installed these guards at each outside the elevators, and I said, I don't need this. This is not what I'm going to do. I'm not doing it. So I looked for another place, and Ed Schmidt said, oh, you can't leave Center City. Oh, Center City is where it's at. And I said, no, it used to be. But the companies are moving out. We're moving out. And he was very upset at that. But I took the precaution of telling each trustee individually what I was going to do and why. And they said, well, okay, it's your decision. We're not going to stand in the way of it. If you can find something we can afford, we'll do that. So I hunted out the place in Wayne, which was cheap. Loved working in Wayne. It was great. Loved Wayne. So we went from the homeless down to an area of stores where, they sell golf pants with little ducks embroidered on them, and we had, Starbucks, and very interesting.
Before we talk about what you did with the Institute, I just want to put it in the context of the history of where you are. This is 1989, 1990 when you took the job?
I took the job in January 1990.
So you got one in college, and is Dave still in school? Where's Dave?
Dave is still in college, I think.
I was a sophomore that year, so
yeah.
So you got 2 kids in college.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It was a little risky. They didn't offer much in benefits at all, any benefits, nothing. But it was an interesting job. It was something I really wanted to do, and Dad had the benefits, so I had the freedom to do that. But I knew I had to get this office out of its financial jam. It got so bad at some point that one of the trustees actually came, took me to lunch and said, look, I think you're a really capable person and I like you, but this place isn't going to survive. I don't want to see you out in the street. You know, you're out of a job. He says, you really need to think about something else. And I said, no, who's going to hire an overweight middle-aged woman in this market? It was a very depressed thing. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. He said, I think we're not going to be able to survive the year. I said, I appreciate the insight, but I wasn't going to go back to TA, and nobody was hiring in title because it was one of those recession times. So the solution was to pump out more programs. Guys didn't do much. I mean, they did not kill themselves. They did 2 or 3 seminars at tops a year. When I left, we were doing 52. We needed the income. You had to have another approach. You couldn't do that. So we started just pumping out stuff. And I was really a little scared about it because I didn't know what's going to work. And what we worked very hard on was continuing education requirement. At that time, there was no requirement that agents have continuing ed credits to keep their licenses up. We did get that eventually in '96, but there was a group within the association whose idea years before had been to combine the institute and the association, and Ed had fought it off because he thought it was, you know, it's my thing, this is mine, we founded it and I'm not going to do that. You know, you got to realize I'm working with men who are territorial, lawyers who are taught to argue, title people who are intensely competitive with each other. This is not an easy group. Everybody thinks somebody else has another agenda. So those meetings were a revelation to me. You know. I often felt like saying, boys, 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 just stop arguing now, let's be nice. The first meetings I had gone to with the association I was almost the only woman in there. It was really an old boys club. Despite the fact that it's not like that in other areas of the country, but it was there. It was there. So there was a group that wanted to combine it, and there was a group that didn't want it, and they fought each other constantly. And me, I didn't give a damn. I was having enough trouble doing what I was doing. And finally, President of Conestoga, Sam Muster, said, we are going to put this through, and we need to have you say that you can do both groups. And my options were do it or be out of a job. So I said, sure. He drove in from Lancaster to tell me this. We met at some Denny's out on Lancaster Pike, halfway between his place and mine. It was like this clandestine meeting, you know. You know, is anybody seeing? Okay, now don't be talking about this to the other ones, but this is what's going to happen. My group is going to put this out there on the floor, and I need you to say that you're going to be doing it. I mean, these guys were nuts.
So what is the association? What's the difference?
The association is a trade association which monitors legislation that affect title, and a lot of legislation affects title because it covers about 8 or 9 different areas of the law. So something's always happening. They monitor legislation. They provide services to the agents. You know, they had a newsletter sort, the PR committee. They had a convention where people would meet once a year, and they would have big speakers, and it was purposes of education and more than enough drinks to lubricate the event. They do all kinds of things like that. It's a trade association. We would sponsor legislation that we liked or backed it. We had a council lobbyist in Harrisburg that we had. Things like that.
Now, by combining it, how does that change your job?
I changed it quite a bit. First of all, they kept the corporate identity separate. The Institute is a 501c3, which is educational, and the association is 501c6, which is trade association. A critical difference is that the Institute cannot, as an educational thing, cannot lobby. So I had essentially two contracts, one with that and one association, one with the Institute. And they had to be kept separate. We even had separate stationery. We had two different phone numbers. All came to the same office. But legally, we could not do certain things in certain capacities. So I had to have one identity here and one identity there. And I told them, the job is too much for me to be running to Harrisburg, So you're going to have to find your legislative committee. They're going to have to do that job because I don't have time to do that. And they agreed to that. They agreed. I had, certain conditions set down that I would do or not do. And that was a smart move. And I greased it for them by saying, there's a chance that I would be looking like I'm lobbying, and I would then lose the Institute, that the Institute would lose its nonprofit status. So as lawyers, they understood that argument. My argument was, I can't do that. I can't run back and forth like that. They had 12 committees, and I had to attend every meeting of every committee. And I had no place in the office to do that. And I was on the road all the time, meeting with these various people, until I got an office that had a room and said, that's it. They have to come to the office now. I could be very bossy. But they couldn't find anybody else to take the job. They knew that. There was the whole faction there that said, it's not going to work. She's not going to be able to do it. She's going to crumble, because you know what these guys are like. But it worked. It worked. They were so afraid that it was not going to work that even in the contract, they made a compact between the two of them. I worked it out with a guy on our board who's a real estate partner down at Fox Rothschild. They even had a clause in the compact for dispute resolution, conflict resolution, in case I get caught between competing interests. And they competed. They competed. All you had to do is sit in a meeting, and one guy would say something, the other guy would stay. And with all due respect, so I would just go get another cup of tea, because I knew that was going to be here, The trick to them, working with them, was to work with them before the meeting. You had to walk in the meeting with your decision in your pocket, because once they started arguing on the floor, it was all over. So you find who will agree with you, and you call up and say, I need your support on this issue, and who else can you talk to? That one, okay, make sure you do. And I would call, and we'd just, even if you called somebody and they say, no, I'm not going to agree with you, at least I knew where they stood. Until you had a consensus enough that to pass whatever and do it. But you do it beforehand, because if you don't and you argue on the floor, one loudmouth will steamroll it. You have to work it out behind closed doors. You understand? Yeah. It's very political. It's very political. And the fact is, they often are competing because of their companies. They're competing companies. So they don't want the other company to get their way. It would look bad. So you have to keep that in mind. That's why I didn't think a woman would be able to handle them. I know a couple of guys, a couple of attorneys who turned the job down one guy I worked for in TA, he said, I'm not going to do it. He told me, you're crazy. They're going to cut your knees off. I said, yeah, it's either that or working for Bill. And yeah, all right. Oh, you left. Yeah, I did. um, it was tough. It was tough because you were always dealing with factions. They're very territorial. They're very competitive. They're always at each other. They seem real nice at those meetings and parties and stuff, but you get them on the floor and they fight. They will fight. And unless you work it out ahead of time, it's a lot of that. And you have to be very clear about what you will stand for and what you won't. And say, that's my line. I'm not passing that. That's it. Deal with it. It turned around. It turned around. When I started in '90 and we didn't have money in the Institute, we were going to close our doors. And the answer was to borrow money from the association, or we were going to go under. I never told them how really bad it was, because they would have just said, we're just throwing good money after bad. I mean, I went through a summer, I didn't pay myself. That's how bad it was. I only paid the rent of the phone and my 2 people. Only things that wouldn't cut me off or close my doors. I got paid when the money started coming in again in August, but it came back and I made up for it. But I never told them that because I knew they wouldn't agree. And it went to the floor in the association, and the same factions who wanted it united and wanted it separate were at loggerheads again. But I had done the homework ahead of time, with help, with help. And I'll tell you right now who was one of the guys that voted against it. My old boss. He turned. His vote was no. That's why I say he's up there smiling. But that's what he did. That's what he did. He voted against. And who else voted no? The guy that took me out to ask me if I would take both of them. He also turned it down. He said, no. Well, he said to me, it's not personal, it's a business decision. I just think it's going to go under, and I don't want to throw my money into it. But I had the votes. I knew I had the votes. But that's the kind of thing that went on all the time. At the same time, I had to be bringing in money. So the programs, they eventually, they sponsored the legislation to have continuing ed, and that saved us. Because they didn't have to, drag people in anymore. They had to take courses. And for years, for most of the time I was there was really no competition. A couple companies tried to come in. One guy called, I remember, from a company and said, we would like to buy your home study course from you, and we would do it. And I said, well, no, that's our bread and butter money. That program pays the rent. And he said, well, if you don't do it, he said, we're going to crush you. I said, have at it. I did. I thought, this guy is stupid. How do you make a negotiation opening it up like that? Well, we're going to crush you. That's not what you do. I thought, this guy's too dumb to live. Of course, the company didn't last more than 2 years, and they never did get it. I was going to give that. I can't believe he found his way to work every morning. He was pure amateur compared to the guys on my board. Hello, is this a negotiation? You're offering me what? And we still are. The Institute is still the source of title education in the state. I developed chapters in the different areas of the state, and they brought in more people, and they provided more structure. I don't know. I started out with a budget in the Institute of $160,000 a year for everything: rent, phone, salary, the Xerox man, everything. And when I left, it was $500,000, and the association was close to $500,000. So by the time I left, we had about $1 million running through the office. Like the membership, when I took it, I said to the membership chairman, when are you going to have A campaign? No, nobody's going to join. Times are bad. So I ran a membership campaign. Just said, thanks, goodbye. I mean, they didn't even try. They didn't. Part of the problem is the people that used to run them were always retired people who were just doing it by the side. It wasn't their real job. They had finished their real job. But I had to keep this job. I had kids going to college, you know. So we worked our asses off. We really did. But, you know, it worked out. I left that in very good financial shape with, you know, seminars all over the state from one end to the other. Like I said, we did about 52. With the year I left, we did 52 on the calendar that year. But it was always a battle. It was always a battle. The chapters were good in one sense. In the other sense, they said, well, we want to run the courses. You know, and you say, well, you know, this is what you have to do if you want to do that. I would make, because when you do accreditations, there's a whole process. You're dealing with the state. Because we were accredited for the state title people, and we were also accredited for the legal people, the lawyers, because lawyers are frequently title people. So the courses would be accredited for both, but that's two reporting agencies. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork and follow-up and time, deadlines, and things that have to be done, and, you know, rules. It's the state. You know, you get crazy bureaucrats running stuff, so you had to do that. It was sometimes difficult to persuade them, but you had to persuade them nicely, but you had to persuade them. Otherwise, it's possible they could have done it the way they wanted to, but I couldn't allow that. I couldn't allow that. I would lose too much business. I was running a business, you know. And it was very funny because sometimes the trustees would say, you deserve a raise. We want to give you a raise. Look how good this is. And I say to them, I would love to have it. I said, but don't forget, whatever you tell me I'm getting, I have to bring that in. It's not coming. They worked for corporations, and the money drifted down from some level up here. You know, they were national companies, so who knows? And I said, whatever you say, I have to bring that in. It will make my job harder. You know, I have X number. I don't have a budget to give me a raise. You know, it's sometimes they don't quite understand unless you run your own business, and that's what I was doing, even though I didn't own it. They didn't quite understand that. They did get it after a while. You know, and I got my raises as money popped in, but they really didn't understand sometimes, you know. Crazy. So I did. I had 2 separate contracts, and each one was up every June. It's only a year. So each June, they could say, you can stay or not. They made a decision every June. And somebody said, how do you stand that? I said, there's nobody dumb enough to take this. Who do you think would put up with this? Is it that one?
It's the whole house. Let me just make sure the camera's still going. Yeah, we're going.
Yeah. So I truly never worried about it. I didn't. It was a little crazy. But it became 2 full-time jobs in the sense doing it like that. It was a lot of people said it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. I know the guy that ran it before me said that's the end of the association. She's never going to manage this. So I was determined to prove him wrong, and did. You know.
Did you ever think, you know, from that one ad in the paper?
Exactly. It was just a chance, and I had no intention of staying. I really didn't, because I really didn't understand what he was saying. I had a lot to learn. It was a very challenging job, but I enjoyed it. I did. You know. At some point, though, it's time to go. You know, I had done as much as I felt I could do. But it's a lot of people to handle. You know, the office is just a small office, but we were actually dealing with all of these people everywhere. But it was fun and a lot because I got to go to the ALTA conventions, the National Association, and Dad and I went to everywhere. I mean, we went to Puerto Rico and went to Hawaii twice, and we went to, Palm Springs and Palm Beach and Scottsdale, places we would probably not have seen, but that's where these were, so we got to see a lot. Most of those conventions I didn't have to do much except attend meetings. Some of them I did presentations, but not a lot. So we got to see a lot. I did not want to get active on the national level. I can't deal with that. I'm dealing with enough, And so they were fun to do that. I had told Dad before I took the job, I said, either you have to be willing to come with me to these things, so I'm not traveling alone. Oh yeah. He's always glad to do that. So that was nice, and the money was good. The money was good. Not bad. Not bad for what it was. Yeah. Of course, when I left, they couldn't find anybody to take the job at that salary, but that's, I didn't leave because of money. It was just time for me to go. That's all. You reach a point where you say, I've done all I can. I don't want to deal with it anymore.
How long were you there?
12 and a half years. Started January 90. I left June 92. And then I worked part-time for a couple of years until Dad had his accident. So it was there quite a long time. I gave them a year. I told them a year before. I said, by the June convention, I'm gone. And I told them that in June.
So 2002. 2002 you left.
2002.
You said 92, I think.
No, 2002.
Okay. Wow.
So they had plenty of time. I didn't want to leave them in the lurch. It was, because it meant something to me. I really, grew that baby, and I wanted it taken care of. And I didn't want to just leave them in the lurch. They did what they had to do. So, fortunately, we had Pam in the office who'd been there a couple of years or more, and she was very capable. She applied for the job late in the game. They actually did a national search, but they could not find anybody to take the money. People would say, "Are you serious?" But they could work it out with Pam. Pam was good. She's an attorney in addition to being in there, so it was fine. And I think she did a good job. I mean, now she's caught in a whipsaw from the economy. Things are bad, and she's having trouble with that. But, I've been there and done that already, It was an interesting job. I'm really glad I took it. I was really glad. Anything to get out of Bill Cotter's clutches.
So during this time, you're going over work. You have the family. You get, I think we left the kids off. They're young. It's advanced parenting once you get into the teenage, years. What was that like, being a parent of two teenage boys?
Well, you guys were fun. You really were. First of all, you didn't get into big trouble. We did not have that kind of trouble where you were, in trouble at school or, cracking cars up or, whatever, that type of stuff. You were really good kids. The trick to teenagers is making sure their friends are good kids, because you lose your real influence, the one you have when you were a little kid. Mom and dad are everything. But, when you're 15, it's your friends that are important. So the trick is to find good friends, which you don't have a whole lot of control over. The kid does. But fortunately, you seem to run in a good crowd. And it was kind of fun. It really was. It really was, because we didn't deal with a lot of heavy problems with you as teenagers. And in truth, Dad and I would not often talk about you to some people because their kids were always having some kind of problem, and it felt like we were bragging and saying, "Oh, you must be doing something wrong." But kids will do what they're going to do. Sometimes not often because of you, but even in spite of you, they do what they do, and some of it's not controllable. But you have to always be aware of what kids are doing. And one of the things we wanted to be sure is that you stayed active. We figured that the more active you were in groups and clubs and sports or whatever, the less time you had to get into trouble. And I know we had trouble with David, who was always happy to sit in his room. But I know you got to be out and do something. You got to be active. You know, Dad and I tried to be an example that way. You know, we were active in the church. You know, I ran the Sunday school, and Dad ran the bazaar, and we were active in the firehouse. And I had various groups and stuff that I belonged to, and you know, that's what we wanted to do, because our truly the feeling was not only is it going to be good for you, but it keeps you out of trouble. So it worked out, and you guys were fine. I mean, truly, we had very little trouble with you two. You guys were easy compared to dealing with parents. Yeah, really. You know.
Oh, I forgot that we. Do you remember leaving Penn Win and moving here?
Yeah, we felt that we were outgrowing that house. It was tiny. We wanted something larger, but we wanted it within the same school district. So we just about made it. There's only one house in, and we just wanted a nicer place, a step up. And that's why we moved here. But we really, I didn't have to change the phone number even. You know, that house is a matter, you can walk to that house in 20 minutes or less, 15. It's not as fun a neighborhood, but the way I met people before at Penn Win was through you and, your brother. Here, by the time we came here, you were older. You weren't playing outside in the street anymore, and I didn't get to know the people. The neighbor situation wasn't as much fun. Nice people, here and there, but not quite the same. But I was so busy by that time with these jobs, I didn't have that much time anymore to do that either, though I would have liked more, But people that I liked here that tended to move away, something I said, I don't know. And we moved here, we had more room, you had your own room, and grandmother had her own, and it was a little easier. We had extra space, and that's why we moved. That's why anybody moves. You want something a little bit better.
It was nice here.
It is a nice house. I like it. I'm very comfortable here. I would hate to leave it. I know someday I might have to, but I'm not planning to at the moment. Really. Yeah. I have nice neighbors here. They have children, and I like to see kids around. I didn't want to. We did look in those 55 and over things, but it's like a geriatric ghetto. I don't want to do that. That's boring. I like kids coming to the door at Halloween, that type of stuff. So, yeah, we've been here 31 years.
Yeah, I say it was. Dave's in Wisconsin, and I'm in New York, and one of the things that I got to have that my kids don't have is the grandparents aren't so close. We moved so far away, but what was it like with Nan and Pop being so close? I'm thinking 80s, the 80s and 90s range.
It was fine.
Christmas
It was fine when they were still healthy. It was fine. They were very busy when they were in their 60s. They belonged to lots of things. They traveled. So you almost had to make an appointment to call. And that suited us fine. Later on, when they began to fail, it was better that they were close, because I would never have survived if we had been too far. I mean, we were getting calls in the middle of the night. I was always running to the emergency room, and it was constantly like that. So it was better that they were close by. It had to be that way. And taking care of them at the same time I was doing this job was a trick and a half. So lots of things went by the board. I just, there's only so much you can do. I mean, I never got home before 7. It was a long day. It was a long day. Unfortunately, I had to do a lot of it during the day for them, so that ended up staying at night a lot of times, go back or staying. Dad would come up with a pizza, something like that. I mean, when they were younger, it was fun. We saw them quite often, as you remember, and it was fine. They came up in a culture that everybody lived within a shouting distance, and they thought they lived far from us here. I mean, that's how they were. Everybody lived across the street from each other and down the road, and they didn't understand this. People moving apart, they thought Americans, quote unquote, were cold because they didn't have those tight family ties. They were cold, very cold people. Don't they care? Yeah, well. But, so anyhow, those were very tough years, though. Once they began to fail, that was the worst part of my life. Just juggling it, trying to keep up, the job and keeping after them and the house, I mean, I didn't have help. We did it. I did for a while. I had Merry Maids, but sometimes you would walk in and you couldn't tell if they'd been there. And I said, "This is ridiculous. I'm not doing this." Crazy. So it was a lot. It was a lot to do. There was a lot. I think I retired because I was just tired at that point. They had passed away. By the time they passed away, I was exhausted. I was out of it totally. Because during those years too, while I'm all that busy, you guys were, getting married, or weddings and things. So it was a whirlwind. It was a whirlwind. And we tried to, attend the things that you guys were involved in. We went to the plays, we went to the concerts, we did all that stuff. And it all had to be fit in. It all had to be fit in. So I don't doubt that I was tired.
And stressed.
And stressed. I was very stressed. It was very stressful. It really was. Because handling them at work was stressful. Handling my parents was more stressful. And then just trying to do the night stuff was stressful. Yeah. Just fitting it in. That was a very tough time. Very tough. I mean, now I feel like, geez. I mean, if I want to spend the day reading a book, I can do it. It's nobody needs me someplace else.
I mean, it was not only stressful with the volume of things that were being juggled, but it was also difficult to watch.
Extremely difficult. Yeah. Extremely difficult. My biggest fear in life is that I will end up like that. That is my biggest fear. I don't fear getting older. I don't like it. People are afraid to get old, get sick, and die. And what you have to be afraid of is getting old, getting sick, and not dying. That's the hard part. That's the hard part. Terrible. They would have been better off and would have suffered less had they gone 5 years before. It was a nightmare. A nightmare. And there was nothing you could do about it. See, that good, sturdy peasant stock, their bodies kept on going, even though their minds rotted in their heads. That's not what I want to do. I won't have a choice, but I hope not. That's my biggest fear. Some people are great until the end, and that's fine. That's how I'd like it. As hard as it was when your grandmother died, so sudden. But afterward, we thought, she was there until she wasn't there. She was always afraid of ending up with Alzheimer's or something like that. She feared that a lot. it was lucky in that sense that she went when she did, because she had lung cancer. She would have had a terrible number of years. It was a blessing, you know. Fine, that's how I'd like to go. You know, afterward we realized, you know, that was probably for the best. You know, I remember in the middle of all that, at its peak, at its worst, one of the trustees said that he'd gone to visit his mom and found her gone in her chair, just like, you know, grandmom, and it was very distressing. And I said to him, you don't know how lucky you are and how lucky she was, because she was great till the very end. I remember telling him that. I don't think he understood quite, but if you've done that, it was a nightmare. I never set foot in that nursing home until since the day I walked out. That was it. It was awful, just awful.
Unfair too.
Huh?
Unfair too, I think.
Unfair?
Yeah.
Oh, they were horrible. They were horrible. Absolutely horrible. Don't get me started with nursing homes.
I don't mean just the home. I mean, it was just unfair that it happened to them.
It was unfair to
you.
them? Okay.
Yeah.
It was unfair to them, definitely. It's not how, that was not a good way to go. They led a, you know, good, hardworking life. They should not have ended that way. It was not right. It was not right. They suffered. They suffered. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. I don't know what else could have been done, but, you know, what else do you do? But it was a nightmare. I couldn't believe it when it was over. I couldn't believe it, because it felt like it would do it the rest of my life. It would happen. It would just keep going, and I couldn't quite believe it. I really couldn't. It was extremely stressful. Twice I had chest pains that landed me in the ER. It's just stress. It's just stress. They did all these tests. At least I found out that the heart was fine, because they did everything. Now the heart's fine. No problem. But, you know, there's a breaking point at some point. You know, keeping all those balls up in the air, and then the emotional stress is the problem. So, yeah, it was not fair to them, and it was extremely difficult for us, you know, because Dad and I were the only ones here. I mean, Bob's heart is in the right place, but his body is 1,000 miles away. You know? I mean, he did the best he could, but there was no choice between taking care of them, taking care of their house. I took care of the finances, keeping all that up, and making sure those things were done. You know, it was all in addition to doing what we normally do. It was tough, you know, selling that house, emptying that house. Oh, God, emptying that house. I'm sorting things now, and to tell you the truth, my whole goal in this thing is looking at something and say, do I want my kids to have to empty this drawer? What am I keeping this for? And that's what I've been doing. That's why that room is a disaster. I have been pulling everything out and sorting it and shredding stuff. I don't know how many bags. I thought there were 5. Dad says there were more than 5 large trash bags of shreds. See, this is stuff I'm saving for you. You don't have to do this. You know, but I am. I look at these drawers and think, oh my God, because I felt like I was intruding in their lives when I was opening drawers and things. You know, it was a very strange feeling. You didn't search through your parents' drawers. You know, it was like, my God, I'm invading their privacy here. But, you know, it's not a pleasant job. Yeah. No. But no.
We have about 15, probably 10, 15 minutes left on the tape, and for the night. So we'll end on a more fun story. What do you remember about first becoming a grandparent?
Oh my God, that's so exciting. That is so exciting. Well, first of all, we were thrilled that they had reached that point, because they had had such problems trying to have a baby. So, you know, and your heart just breaks, and there's nothing you can do. The worst thing that you can feel as a parent is having a kid that's having a problem that you can't help. There's nothing you can do. And they were having terrible problems. I can't tell you how depressed, unhappy they were. I'm sure you do know, you know. But I know that when they got pregnant with Tabby, Kim said, if this doesn't work, that's it. I can't go through this again. And I understood what she was saying. So it was so exciting that you had, you know, they had reached the point where they were actually going to be a baby. So that was fun. That was fun.
It's right out again. It's popping up. Looks weird.
So, I mean, my God, there's nothing like it. It's like having your own again without being able to sleep. You know, holy cow, this is nice. Oh, here, dear, is yours. She's wet. So, of course, you remember the night. It was New Year's Eve, and we were supposed to go to a party, and you guys were in New York, and Chris was there, and who else was there? Paula? No, Debbie?
Maybe Debbie.
Debbie. And you were going out to dinner or someplace, I don't know. And David called, and we were dragging our feet, waiting to leave for this party, because I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave until I heard. I didn't have a cell phone then. And he finally called and said, "It's it. You know, we're here. Everybody's fine." They were worried. They were worried that there might have been something, you know. They had done all these things to keep the pregnancy, and I think they were afraid that maybe we kept a problem. You know, that was in the back of their minds. So the fact that she was fine and they were fine was just, you know, exciting. I remember they called.
I got a page, actually.
You got a page.
I had a text pager for about 6
It's a
months
girl.
of my life, and it's a girl.
It's a girl, and you yelled, "It's a girl," and everybody applauded. And David said, "Well, she got her first first accolade there in New York City." It was very exciting. It was very exciting. And we went out the following, she was about a week old. We went out. Kim's mom stayed there the first few days, and she left when we came. And we were there for about 5 days, 6 days. I spent the time cooking, putting stuff in the freezers. And they said, you know, we lived off of that because we didn't have time to cook. You know, for the first one, you don't know what a real problem is or not. Is this normal or not normal? You don't know. And later on, you think, my God, I was stewing over a kid that was totally normal. You know, yeah, I made him all kinds of stuff. So.
One more second, I was driving you crazy. So
yeah, so it's very exciting. It is exciting, but a new baby is always exciting. It's just like, oh my God, you know, it's a new human, and it's fun to see them and to see your family in them. You know, everybody spends. Each family says, "Oh yes, she's got his eyes and her nose and this and this and then the other side say the same thing, except they pick different things."
Well, Tabitha's baby picture looks like yours.
Huh?
You and Tabitha look.
Well,
alike.
yeah, our baby pictures. I think she doesn't anymore, but our baby pictures were really, really similar. That was funny. That was funny. So, you know, eventually we had 4. So. They were all exciting. Each one is exciting.
Do you remember getting? Well, you were traveling up to New York. But what was the story when you heard about Josh?
What was? Well, you had called and said that you were on your way, and she was going to have the baby that morning, and we were going to come that morning, and we were on the turnpike, and you called on the phone, and said it's a boy, and I couldn't believe she had it already. You know, we thought we were going to be. You know, I had time, I think it was like 9 o'clock or something, or you called. And I had bought 2 teddy bears, a pink one and a blue one, because you didn't find out what he was. So I fished the blue one out and came up, and I had told you, I think it's a boy. I was just guessing, you know. And you came in with the blue teddy bear, and you said, "Oh, my God. You really knew. You really knew." And I let you go for a while, and then I said, I got a pink one in the car.
Which, by the way, we gave the pink one to Sarah. She loves the blue one.
Yes, I know. You know, who knows with kids? But that was fun. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. I really did. Yeah, well, you know, babies, they're great. They're great. So, yeah, it was good. Loved it.
We had the J for Jenny.
Hmm?
The J in Joshua was for Jenny, and we had
Yes.
Tony for
Yes.
Pop.
Yeah. So, you had your names all picked out. You know, your name was going to be Andrew. We were going to be Andrew Keith, and then at the last minute, I changed my mind. I said, no, it's going to be Keith Andrew. I had already had all the papers filled out, and they got crossed out, including the announcements, and I crossed them out. So that's how close you came to being Andrew.
Was it on my birth certificate?
I was putting in the papers for the, you know, filling in the information, and I crossed it out. You know, yeah, I'm glad we settled on Keith.
Yeah. Fits me.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. What else do you want to know?
Well, I only have 2 more minutes on the tape, so this is a good place to break.
I think so.
I think we're both done.
Okay. How about